Hey there, welcome to Beauty and the Pom podcast. I'm Kiani Mills.
And I'm Andy Reid.
Two friends who have a very similar set of values, but who have taken very different life paths to end up in similar situations.
We are also business owners, parents, property enthusiasts, and bloody short on time. So we bring you this podcast to shine a light on humanising business.
Because look, let's face it, business is life, and life is business.
Beauty and the Pom is back. I hope everybody's going well. Kiani Mills, I hope you're well.
I am, thank you very much. We've got sun shining. I cannot complain.
Yeah, well, I very much can. I very much can. For those who don't know, Kiani's up in the bright sunshine of Queensland, and I'm down the south of Australia, down in Melbourne, where it is the polar opposite. I don't think people outside of Australia think and realise that there are other parts that are not just sun, sea, and sand. That's how it got sold to me when I moved over, right? So, So guys, if you do come over to Australia, if you are overseas, I know we've got some Canadian supporters, so if you do fancy coming overseas and you want to get a suntan, maybe don't come to Melbourne. But anyway, Kiani,
Melbourne's beautiful in January.
It is nice. No, don't get me wrong. It is nice. We're just having an abnormally damp time of it right now. So, just make sure you don't come in the spring, come in the summer. So, team, we've got a bit of an episode to go through today, and it's kind of acting like the precursor to a really big topic that we're going to sort of almost have underpin a lot of the stuff that we talk about. We've mentioned about, and we've mentioned it very briefly and very sparsely, but one or two keen ears have picked up on it, on this whole purple pill concept. Right? And no, this is not going to turn into a recreational drug show. No, it's not. But we've got to do a bit of a precursor behind it, right? So Kiani, when we're talking about the purple pill briefly, it's sort of come off the back of the Matrix movie, right? So maybe explain to everybody what red pill, blue pill is, where we've even come up with this whole thing.
Yeah, okay. And I think this is a really cool premise because this is a lot of the reasons how Andy and I came together in the first place. Me posting my Mooney stuff and Andy strongly questioning my Mooney stuff, and obviously landing on the topic of humanising business. And we realised that, of course, business is life and life is business, and it really does all come together. But when we look at that matrix, it's one or the other. So it's the blue pill and the red pill. Which way do you want to go? In our kind of world, the red pill really kind of references, a sense of non-conformity, and some may reference them as the lefties, I suppose. And that can be seen as a very, stuck viewpoint, and I guess one that maybe not everybody wants to live on. Then we've got the blue pill on the other side, which is that conveyor belt, and you're a bit of a slave to life and rolling with the punches and going with the flow. And it is a little bit more of a open mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, but it really is kind of one way or the other. So when we looked at the concept of the matrix and take the red pill or the blue pill, we went, well, fuck it. We're going to take the purple pill. We want the purple pill. We want to be able to make our own choices. We want to be able to stand up for what we believe in. We want to be able to really put our beliefs, our ethics, and our values on a pedestal and live by these every single moment of every single day. But at the same time, we want to be able to follow that flow of life and surrender to the experiences and be a little bit more fluid in our nature and way of doing things. And it really, in my mind, it's that old saying, like, have your cake and eat it too. So you don't have to be one or the other. What we are really trying to create here, humanizing business, bringing life, relationships, parenting all together, having one set of core values in life that can then spread across all of these other areas. So this purple pill to us is that it's that middle pillar where you've got a little from column A, a little from column B to create that unique blueprint that is you, that is fundamentally you, where we're not putting up with shit. We're not, bending over backwards for others. We're not being trampled on or stomped on or whatever it might be. We are individuals in our power, standing on our own 2 feet, creating the life that we want to live, but still living in a corporate world, still bringing spirituality into our everyday practices, still being conscious parents, but making rules and sticking by those rules. So, people talk about balance and, the life balance and work-life balance and things like that. This is almost like, well, balance almost doesn't really exist. Like, it is living in a state of unbalanced and being okay with that because we're following a really clear moral compass.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Realistically, Tim, so the whole thing with the Matrix is the main character, Neo, this is the choice that he gets. He's living a mundane life where he's plugged into the Matrix, he's getting a wage, he's renting a property, but he's got this alter ego that he's known by, which is Neo, which is his hacker name, right? And then he gets an opportunity to go down the rabbit hole and see how far it goes, and that's when he unplugs from the Matrix, takes the red pill, and then goes down a rabbit hole and finds out what life's really all about. We really need to tackle this bit by bit, though, Kiani. And the first thing that we really need to tackle is this conveyor belt. It is the blue pill side of life, because I think when it comes to people conforming, not conforming, so on and so forth, I reckon, and it's the same with gender equality, it's the same with race and all those sorts of things, whereby there's been so much suppression on one side to the point where there has to be an equal and opposite reaction going the other way, right? And the non-conforming, the red pill part of society are those anarchists, are those people that really don't abide by anything that the mainstream, for want of a better word, world puts up with. The conveyor belt side of things, that blue pill, that conformity piece, I've been really exploring this myself, because I would suggest that it's probably, in fact, no, I will say that it is the main reason as to why I ended up with some serious mental health issues. Because my parents, bless them, they were both police officers, and they were both very much plugged in, conforming, being uniform, knowing that they are a cog in a machine, they are a piece of a puzzle. And off the back of that, that's how they conditioned me. Was to make sure that you were doing well, and that you were doing your part in the team well, and all that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, to a bit of a detriment in terms of what I wanted to be and who I was, and there was a lack of an opportunity to really explore who I was. I'm not blaming them; they weren't bad parents. It's just the way that they were conditioned back in the day, right? This whole notion and this conveyor belt idea was something that I came up with my doctor when I was going through some therapy and whatnot. And it was all about how I felt that I was put on a conveyor belt, and just instead of me taking control of my direction, I was just doing the things that I needed to do as and when I got to each part of the production line. So this conveyor belt idea is something that a lot of people get conditioned to be in, right? Because we all, paying taxes, living by the law, paying your bills, doing all the stuff that means that you are okay in society's eyes, right? And I don't know if you've experienced anything like this, Kiani. I reckon that you probably have. But I think if we were to conform completely, that's what I was doing, and that's what caused me to crash, then it would have to be to the detriment of who we are, surely.
Well, I guess it takes away your uniqueness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, you could go down the political line of, it's the red communist side, right? Which is that sort of communist sort of esque way of running a country versus a democracy. But then you could argue, what is a democracy these days when you look at the likes of the shitstorm that's going on in Britain and whatnot, for example. And that's probably one of the reasons why anarchy is starting to take over a little bit more. There are starting to be a few more people popping that red pill, right, in really exploring what life should be like for them. But I don't know about any of you guys that are listening in, if you can relate to this whole conveyor belt mentality, because for me, it led to some decisions. Not that I regret any of the decisions that I've made, but it's led to some decisions that were made that I didn't feel were being made by who I am. They were made by me being what I was. So you go get an education, then you get an education, you go to university, get a degree, get a job, get a house or a girlfriend, one way or the other, or a boyfriend or whatever. Then once you've done that, you start settling down. Once you do that, you get married. Once you do that, you have a kid. Once you do that, you have another kid, maybe get a bigger, and you know what I mean? Like, and that for me was something that I won't say was enforced on me, but I was certainly indoctrinated into that way of being. No fault of anybody around me. It's just how they were conformed, they were plugged into this whole matrix notion. Kiani, from your side of things, because you obviously very open with that, with the spiritual side of stuff. Do you think that, because and this is where you're a tremendous contradiction. You talk about the business side of things in an incredibly sharp way, and in some respects and aspects, when you do talk, you are very, very blue pill. Very blue pill. And you have to be, right? Geez, you run a legal practice, for goodness sake. Yeah. So how do you go with this whole conveyor belt notion? Because your life has been on a very, very jaggedy conveyor belt, to be honest.
Yeah, look, it really has. And look, I think to premise all of this, I don't think, and this is the whole concept of the purple pill, it's pulling parts of the blue and parts of the red that serve you to create this purple. And everyone's purple pill is going to be different. And for me, I think it really started even just having the idea. And it wasn't like people said you can't live life any other way, because you're right. I mean, even going down to having children, you go to the GP, you do a pregnancy test, you go to the local hospital, you follow the hospital protocol. I mean, I was 22 when I had Kobe, so how the hell was I supposed to know there was any other way of doing it, or any other types of medicine or treatment, or, you know, anything like that? So even bearing children into this world, you're right, like your parents, we don't know what we don't know. So we follow the path laid in front of us, which for most of us is Western medicine and Western schooling. So the things that we become and the way that we think and the things that we like, and I didn't realize how indoctrinated I was. And the word indoctrination, when I first heard it, I went, oh, that's like a culty thing, isn't it? I was like, actually, no, pull it back a little bit. It's literally, if you think about it, it's the school. I went to local state schools. The books that were on the shelves in the schools have been strategically chosen by those schools to be there. So I learnt the curriculum that was put in front of me by my school. Again, we would go to the GP. I think the most extravagant thing we did was eat Chinese food from the local takeaway store. And that was just, again, parents in their environment passing down their habitual habits from their parents and their parents and their parents. So I very much was the same on this conveyor belt of life. And there's a topic that I speak about quite frequently in my speaking world, and it's the fated life versus the destined life. And this was part of the thought process around the purple pill. And if we look at it that way, our life is fated for us. And if you're on that conveyor belt, it just happens. Motion after motion, things happen, you fall down, you get back up, and you just kind of keep going in that fated process that is set by others for us. But realizing and having this thought and going, hold on a second, I actually get to choose how I want my life to go. I actually get to choose. And I mean, these days we are so lucky to have the access to unlimited education on Google and internet and things like that. I know a lot of it's probably crap, but the parts that is actually true, like we have a true choice to be able to learn what we want to learn and be who we want to be, and decide everything that I have been is based on books that I read, the schools that I went to, the books that my parents read, the schools my parents went to, the way that I was raised, the people I surrounded myself with. They're all patterns, beliefs, and indoctrinated behavior that have been passed down to us generation after generation. So we are literally, you know, those, what are the dolls that go inside each other?
Babushka.
The babushka dolls. We are literally babushka dolls from parents to parents to parents. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just life. But like you, when you go, hold on a second, I don't even know if I actually like Chinese food. I don't even know if I know I definitely don't like English, yet I have a legal practice. It's kind of backwards. But at school, I learned English. You know, I would have loved to have learned astrology at school, but that wasn't offered to me at school. I didn't even know about it until, 5 years ago. So the destined life then becomes the life that you choose, the life that you choose based on the reality that everything you know right now has been made up of other people's beliefs. So it's almost like drawing that line in the sand and going, right, this purple pill that I am creating, I'm going to almost wipe the slate clean of everything and relearn everything again in the way that I want it.
Yeah, absolutely. What I really like about your story is the fact that you managed to take some pretty shitty goings on and use that to almost wake up to the possibility of what could happen and what could be. I don't know if I'm accurate when I'm saying this. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But is it safe to say that some of the more traumatic events in your life forced you almost to take a look at life differently and go, well, shit, the life that I'm plugged into now has just brought this upon me. That's fucked. What else is out there? Is that fair?
100%. I remember laying, like vividly, I remember laying on the bathroom floor in the fetal position, crying hysterically, looking at the ceiling. I don't even know what I was looking at. I'm like, why me? Like, why? What have I done to deserve this? Like, what the fuck have I done? Why? And I just didn't understand it. And I was so confused and frustrated. I'm like, I'm a good person. I do good things. I don't hurt people. I try my hardest every single day. Why? What? There's more to this. I don't understand. And because I found that patterns were repeating themselves, I found myself in similar situations over and over again. Didn't you learn the last time? And that's what kind of got me thinking. I'm like, what was I meaning? What was I learning? What exactly was there in that was for me to learn? Because I'm missing something. Like there's more to this than what I've been doing currently. And that was the trigger point to go, there's got to be more out there. I'm missing something. Like there's something big going on that I'm just really, really fucking missing.
Yeah, and by the way, Tim, I've actually had a couple of people ask me what we're referring to, and we'll get into that in time, gang. But for now, just be assured that when we say trauma, she is not being dramatic. Bless her. All right, I can assure you of that. I reckon I think one of the key words that we need to talk about when we're thinking about getting off the conveyor belt, or assessing whether our lives are shit. Are we just are we just dancing to someone else's tune here? Is the word creativity. I personally, I've felt that I've been a relatively creative guy over the journey, but for a lot of the stuff that I've done over my journey up until relatively recently, the creative part of me hasn't really done much, right? It's flared up, and generally when it flares up, it created a problem with the matrix that I've been plugged into, right? It generally created an issue of some description.
How dare you have an imagination?
Exactly. But I really think that we need to have a look back, and I would encourage all of our listeners to have a look back, because Kiani's mentioned about school, right? And we're not here to bag out the school systems and teachers and all that sort of stuff, far from it. But there was a TED talk that I listened to from a guy called Sir Ken Robinson. He was an English guy who lived in LA, who got his knighthood for services to education, and he has this one of the most popular TED talks on the website called Do Schools Kill Creativity? And in that TED talk, it's one of the most epic, well-pitched talks you will ever hear, by the way. Just for the entertainment of it, I would highly recommend people go and watch it. But in this TED talk, he basically says that schools are, the way that Western schools are put together, the way that they are constructed and structured, they are designed to put people into functions that serve society, right? And grades, the way that grades are set up, they are set up to make sure that it guides us onto the path that is conforming, that is for society. He also talks about the hierarchy of subjects where, and it's the same in most schools, how English, maths, and science are weighed a lot heavier and are seen as subjects of more gravitas than the arts, than drama, than dance, than music and things like that. And he goes, why is that? Why is that the case? That for some reason, the way that Western education is taught, why is maths more important than the arts? Yeah. And it's a fascinating thing, right? So what it made me do was have a look back at my life, right? And my subjects and my grades. And because I went and did engineering, right, as a degree. Not that I was very good at it, and friends of mine who were at university with me will attest to the fact that they dragged me through that thing by my ass. So thank you to them. I paid them back in beer though, because I was the only one that had a job. So So when we were doing, I was going back and looking through all my subjects. I always used to think I just assumed that maths and physics, that was my jam, because that was the stuff that I used to get better grades at, right? However, there was one grade that eclipsed everything that no one paid attention to, and the reason why no one paid attention to it was because it was only a small part of a bigger topic. In English, you had speaking, writing, and literature, so reading basically. And the speaking element of it only accounted for 10% of the overall grade. When I look back at my speaking grade by itself, I was like some stupidly high, like light years beyond anybody else grade, and no one paid attention to it, right?
And there's too that no one mentioned that to you either.
No.
I mean, you've naturally fallen into that world anyway. And this is I guess if hindsight's a beautiful thing, but imagine if someone had said to you back then, going, you're actually really high in this category, it might have triggered something a little bit sooner.
Oh, 100%. And it's taken longer for me to get to this place. But my advice, if you're in a job, or if you just feel stuck in a rut, right? When you feel stuck in a rut, that generally tends to mean, in my opinion, that you are sat on this conveyor belt and you are bored, right? You are sat on the conveyor belt life, and nothing or very little in your life is giving you a genuine reason for being, right? And I'm saying that delicately. I'm not saying that your life's a waste of space. No. And what I am saying is that maybe your life is lacking that small degree of purpose, that small degree of drive that only comes from being truly connected to who you are, right? If that's the case and you're really struggling for clues, do what I did and go back and have a look at every single one of your grades at school, because even the worst of the worst, even the most arsehole students on the planet were good at something, right? Maybe have a look back.
Yeah.
Because the problem is with school, when you're a kid, and this is another part of this Ken Robinson talk, he said, he tells this story about that he got told about a little girl, a 6-year-old girl that really struggled, very rarely did she pay attention, and she was at the back of class and they were all doing drawing, and she was really quiet and really focused on what she was doing. And the teacher walks up and says, "What are you doing?" And then she goes, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher turned around and says, "Well, how can you do that? You don't know what God looks like." And the little girl turns around to the teacher and says, "Well, they will in a minute," right? So the fact that and he says that from there, it's a shame that back when we are little, we aren't afraid to give things a go. We aren't afraid to try stuff. And unfortunately, due to the way that the world is sort of constructed and the way that we are educated and indoctrinated into society, there is a big argument that suggests that we are so fearful of making mistakes that we have no opportunity to be creative. Because in order to be creative, you need to be comfortable with making a mistake. You can't be creative and not make mistakes. In order to be creative, you must make mistakes, right? Because otherwise, how do you know if it's going to work or not? And so, team, think about that word creativity. Think about whether, your life is just running to that Groundhog Day, straight up and down sort of monotony is the word that I'm after. Now, having said that, though, and we will talk about this in the next episode, there is a certain amount of conformity that we kind of need, right?
Yeah,
we kind of need it. I mean, Key, you know it better than most, right? And for me, one of my key jobs and roles, I'm very loosely connected in the sense that yes, I'll have a bit of legislation that I'm bound to, but after that, I can shout whatever I want at people and they give me money, which is awesome. But for you in the legal field, how does the spiritual person within you cope with the constraints that come with doing something as strict as running a law firm?
Interesting question, actually. I actually, and relevant too, I went to my son's school this week and I spoke to the year 10s about my career path and my journey. And there was a heap of parents that were coming in for the week because I've just come off the back of doing 2 weeks work experience. And the last question that I got asked was, like, how do you know? How do you know what to explore? And this word creativity came up. as well as the word passion. So for me, it was my light bulb got lit in year 10 in my legal studies class. And there was something about the structure of it that had me hooked. And that's where I guess the conveyancing side, I tried every area of law. I really did. Conveyancing for me, not only is it structured, and it is very clear. It's, yes, there's a little bit of grey area, but it's pretty black and white. I am of service to others. So that's where my spiritual and contribution side kicks in, because I'm a necessary service to be able to sell or buy someone's house. Potentially, I go down the path of creating their dream. So for me, I feel as though I'm really of service. Yes, I'm getting paid for that service, but I know that I'm delivering beyond the payment of that service, and the contribution element for me is really important. So the conformity of following the rules helped a lot. Create stability, create consistency in my life. Work for me was that, and I'm sure others will understand that too, that they come to work. It was my sanctuary, it was my safe place. So I'd come to work to follow the process, and then outside of work was when I got to be able to express my creativity in that way. But to these year 10 students, I said, just find what it is that you're passionate about, find what it is that lights that light bulb inside of you, and then follow that path wherever it may take you. And this is, what you were mentioning. Yes, if you feel like you're in Groundhog Day and you're just working through the motions and every day is a drag, have a bit of a look into, so I think school is amazing. And then I had this activity that came up not long ago, working with a kinesiologist of mine in Melbourne. And she said to me, she's like, what do you do for fun? And I was like, oh, play with the kids. And she's like, no, that's fun for them. What do you do for you? Oh, I don't know. I'm an adult. Adults don't have fun. What are you talking about? And then she's like, okay, great. Let's go back to as a kid. What did you like doing for fun? I was like, oh, I was always doing handstands and cartwheels or dancing around or singing. Or she's like, great. I want you 3 times a day to just not in front of mirrors, turn phones off, and just sing at the top of your lungs and dance like no one's watching. And this little spark inside of me lit, and I became this happy little person. But that sparks of creativity. And then you've got this little, internal energy to want to explore and just think about all the things that before we got onto the conveyor belt, who were we then? And what have we let go? Because we have to be adults and we have to be parents and we have to be responsible. If none of that existed, what would you genuinely do every day to make you happy?
I think a lot of small business owners and those that have, become a sole trader or something like that. I think whether you've done it subconsciously or consciously, I think that some of these people have actually either stumbled or purposefully sort of gone down that track of tasting and testing and making themselves feel a bit nervous, right? Making themselves get those butterflies that we'll probably talk about in greater detail at various stages. Yeah. Whether you've thought about this or not, it's probably worth you having a think about. And maybe if you are a sole trader or a small business owner and you're perhaps doubting where you are sitting in your life right now, maybe have a look back, and it could well reinforce the fact that you went, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to give it a crack the way I want to give it a crack. And you might have just forgotten that was the case when you first started your business, because of the fact that when you do start a business, there's a whole load of bullshit, red tape and blah, blah, blah that you've got to go through, the very blue pill shit that is very, very tedious and very annoying. And I reckon half of it is designed to just pound the shit out of your creativity and who you are and what you want to achieve in your life and whatnot, right? Jeez, I know.
And how easy is it to just get into the habit of doing the same thing every day?
And it kills you.
It does. For a minute, you're like, oh, this is great, Business owners, we're constantly dealing with ups and downs and stress, especially at the start of a business. Mm-hmm. So when you do first get to that part of, oh, hold on a second, nothing went wrong today. This is great. Keep going. That's good for a little time. And then you're like, oh God, okay. Oh, here we go again. Okay. Oh, another boring day, another boring day, another boring day. That's that entrepreneurial spirit that needs that creativity. And you're like, okay, I'm ignoring something here, or I'm not feeding something inside of me enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look back at any of the decisions that you made, and I certainly do this and have done this, and we'll constantly be looking to learn from them, regret is something that generally is lining this conveyor belt, right? It generally lines your conveyor belt as you bumble along, and you look at as you drift past on the conveyor belt, and you look and you see what you could have won, like on a game show, right? Where you're like, look at what you could have won. And as you just drift on by.
This could have been your life.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is someone else's life. If you feel any of the decisions that you've made, when you relive that decision in your mind and you feel a deep sense of regret, this just works for me. Work out whether it was a decision that you made with your head or with your heart, because I've gone back and analyzed the real critical decisions in my life. Those real fork in the road moments, and where you've got a decision, yes or no, and it's very binary. And every single one of those decisions that I made with my head is tinged with regret.
And also, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it for someone else?
100%. Generally speaking,
or they're going to be the same thing. The head's for someone else, the heart's for you.
100%. 100%. And it's not to say that you can't do something for yourself and for other people, but your hearts need to be aligned. If you are doing it, say with a partner or something, right? Your hearts very much need to be aligned. Because if they're not, if one's going with heart and one's going with head, then generally speaking, someone's going to regret it.
And after regret becomes resentment.
100%. And as soon as that starts getting harbored, that's very difficult to shift. Very difficult to shift. And there's been a number of things go on recently that, that ultimately, if you need to go back and renege on decisions and whatnot that you regret and what have you, it will cause problems. It will cause hurt. It will cause anxiety. It will cause a bit of destruction, because generally those big decisions are things that your life is built upon. Right? The big key decisions are things that you build your life around. So if you then have to go and alter the foundations, it generally means that half the house might fall down, right? And it's very difficult.
With structure. Yeah. And this applies to our businesses as well. I know that I've made decisions with my head in business, or decisions for others in business, and down the track, I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? I regret my decision because I didn't go with my gut. And then I know that my last business, I resented the shit out of it. I got to a point where I was like, I don't even value what this is. It was such a horrible, a bitter taste in my mouth, because it becomes shame, because I know I could have done better. I knew better and I didn't do it. That's something that you carry. And then that's something you then put out. So business and life, and this is, again, if you've got one set of values and one set of ethics that sit across both, treat work as you do your personal relationships. Treat your business relationships the same as your personal relationships, because a lot of people, we let people in our personal worlds, or in our business worlds, get away with a hell of a lot more shit than we do if they were under our roof.
Yep.
And we've got to start treating everything and everyone the same, because it is the same.
It just makes your life a fuckload easier. It just does. If you can just live to one set of filters.
One person.
It just makes your life so much fucking easier, right? It just does. Anyway, we're going to dig into this purple pill a little bit more, gang. I reckon we need to just chop it off there for a second, let everybody go and have a cup of tea and a breathe and whatnot, and just process what we're talking about here.
There's a lot in there. There was a lot.
There really is. Yeah. We don't want you to start wafting your flags of anarchy around your street, up and down your street and whatnot, and go goose stepping here, there, and everywhere. But have a think about where you're sitting in your life. Have a feel about where you're sitting in your life, and where and how your key decisions were made as you've gone through the journey to this point. Identify whether you're on this conveyor belt through choice or through conditioning, and then we'll catch up with you in the next episode where we start to dissect a bit more of this purple pill analogy that we feel might benefit a fair few people. Key, see you next week, all right?
Awesome. Part 2 coming up. Thank you.
Speak to you soon, guys. Stay safe, healthy, happy. Talk to you then.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very grateful for your time, and we really hope that we've provided some value.
Follow us on Instagram if you've liked what you've heard, and if you have anything that you want us to talk about, things that might have been bugging you but you've not quite had the bottle to really bring it out into the open, send us a DM and we'll happily bring it to the table.